Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our News Digest unit for the month of December, and we're kind of full of lots of extra energy today, so we decided to give the Chinese teacher the day off, and we're going to make this an all-English unit. We're going to do all the talking in our unit today, and we're talking about something that's going on in Denmark. And, of course, that's getting people here in Taiwan to talk about this topic as well. And the question is, should women be drafted into the military? Ooh, that's very sensitive.
No, I say no. You will hear my opinion throughout this. I think it's a terrible idea. And there are lots of reasons why I believe that, but I think it's a great topic, Tom, for classes to use their English skills to debate. You know, Well, maybe divide up the class and put the pros on one side and the cons on the other. No matter what you believe, I think you should be able to debate an issue from either side. It makes you a better debater. We're going to talk about this, but as we always do, guys, we're going to read through today's article. We'll be back.
Denmark drafts women, Taiwan watches closely. Prompted by military threats from Russia, Denmark has recently passed a new conscription law, officially including women in its military draft for the first time. From July 1st, 2025, Danish women, upon turning 18, will be entered into the draft lottery. If selected, they are to serve in the military for 11 months, just as men do. Not only has this decision attracted international attention, but it has also sparked discussions on gender equality and national defense. Although Denmark's reform appears to promote gender equality, it primarily responds to regional instability and the need to strengthen national defense. With growing fears that the war in Ukraine could trigger a wider conflict across Europe, Denmark found it urgent to act. The government emphasizes this shift is not a show of aggression, but a measure to prevent war and meet NATO's expectations for higher readiness among all its members. Denmark's initiative is not without precedent. In recent years, countries like Norway and Sweden have expanded conscription to include women, viewing it as a step toward modernizing forces and social equality. In Israel, compulsory service for both sexes has become widely acknowledged as indispensable for survival due to ongoing external threats. Such examples demonstrate how global defense strategies are shaped by both practical necessity and changing social expectations. For Taiwan, which contends with persistent security threats and a rapidly aging population, female conscription has long been a topic of public debate. Promising as the idea may seem, significant challenges remain. While expanding the draft could strengthen personnel and defense awareness, outdated infrastructure, insufficient barracks, and risks of harassment or gender-based discrimination cannot be overlooked. Moreover, without substantial funding and public consensus, such a policy would face considerable barriers to implementation. Only by confronting these issues can Taiwan determine whether female conscription would truly benefit the defense of its society.
Okay, guys, let's dive in. We're going to talk about Denmark. If you haven't been there before, it's a northern European country. It's part of what we call Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden. They're known over there for their really high living standards, social welfare policies, and very, very high taxation. I think the people in Taiwan would be horrified to go over there and see how high their taxes are. They're really high. And then they have, besides their own personal taxes, they have the VAT tax, VAT, value added tax, which is 25% that's added on almost everything they use or buy. So it is expensive over there, but they have a very generous social safety net, we call that. They pay for your health care, they pay for education, including college. And so you're kind of taken care of, although it's not the same as the U.S. We have a welfare state in the U.S. where people abuse the system. They get on the system and they never get off. That's not what that's for. It's to help you if you really need help. In Denmark, they really check quickly and carefully to see if everyone is using it appropriately. They do not want people taking advantage of that. But this is a big part of why Denmark is trying to draft women. It's to take care of their country, which is quite small, actually.
Pretty cool. I've heard somewhere, though I'm not sure if this is true, but some people say that Denmark is not actually a Scandinavian country. It only applies to Norway, Sweden, and maybe Finland.
I just looked it up before I came.
Yeah, I read it somewhere else that someone says it's not because it's on the European mainland or whatever, so I'm not quite sure. But in any case, in most people's minds, it's a Scandinavian country because it's got the similar flag to the other countries there. But again, we're talking about whether Denmark is going to draft women into the military because of the threat from the Russian bear. Now, here in the first paragraph, it says, prompted by military threats from Russia, Denmark has recently passed a new conscription law, officially including women in its military draft for the first time. Now, here, conscription, of course, means you have to be drafted into the military. You have to be... basically, you have to become a soldier. You're required to do that. I think they do have this here in Taiwan. When I first came to Taiwan many years ago, men had to serve in the military for 2 years, but that term...
Sometimes 2 and 3, you'd have to draw straws. Remember that?
Okay, I don't remember that, but I think they've reduced the time over the years, but I'm not quite sure what it is right now. But as it stands here in Taiwan, women do not have to be drafted in the military. But they want to do this in Denmark. They want to include women in the military draft, and I think that's because of the threat from Russia.
The supposed threat. Believe me, Russia's not going to attack them, but they are next door. So, they're trying to make us all afraid of Russia right now. That's the truth. Some people want World War III. Don't buy into it. So Denmark has come up with this new conscription law, and it started July 1st, 2025. Danish women, that's what we call people who are from Denmark, Danish, or things that are from that place are Danish. It started in this year, actually, 2025. When women turn 18, that's when they will be entered into the draft lottery. I bet people out there know what a lottery is. A lottery is when you have a random drawing, and it's used to select individuals for something, maybe for winning some money. All of us want to win the lottery that way. This is a different kind of lottery, but it still is a random drawing. And they need to serve. If they're selected, you have to be selected first. They have to serve in the military for 11 months, almost a year, just as men do. Before this, it was voluntary. It's now mandatory for men and women to serve in the military. If you hear mandatory, it means you have no choice. You are forced to do something. But if it's voluntary, of course, that's your choice.
Right. And of course, it's probably controversial as to how they are drafted, how the lottery works. Maybe some people pull some strings or whatever so their children don't have to serve in the military. I don't know. But in any case here, they'll have to serve for 11 months, just like the men do. And not only has this decision attracted international attention, but it has also sparked discussions on gender equality and national defense. Okay, so most countries do not draft women into the military. Maybe some are thinking like, well, maybe they won't get combat duty. Maybe they can work behind the lines or whatever. That's probably part of the discussion. But as far as I know, only Israel drafts both men and women. They have threats from all sides there in Israel, so they have to have as many soldiers as possible. But here in Denmark, they're thinking, do we need to have more soldiers? And we don't have enough men. I suppose there's also the problem of a declining birth rate, so they probably don't have enough men to draft into the military. And they're looking for other resources. And they're trying to think about whether women should serve in the military as well.
Well, one of the interesting cons against this was that if they have the women in the military, they're probably going to be during their childbearing years. So it's going to affect their birth rate even more. So I'm not sure this is such a great idea if you're already having some issues kind of persuading young people to have children. So it's really kind of an interesting thing. I think it's going to affect them in ways they didn't expect. But it has, as Tom said, sparked or started discussions on gender. Gender, of course, is the social and cultural roles and behaviors and even identities that are associated with men and women. If you talk about equality, you're talking about whether people are treated fairly or the same in terms of status and rights and opportunities. And national defense, of course, is protecting your country from foreign invaders coming in. So although Denmark's reform just means to change something, hopefully, if you reform something, you improve it. But we've seen with our own eyes that sometimes reforms make things worse than they were before. But they're trying to, at least this is their aim, their target, their goal. They want to promote gender equality, and it primarily responds to how unstable they feel the region is. They feel like they need to really strengthen their national defense, and that would mean strengthening your military, whatever military a country has.
Now, with growing fears that the war in Ukraine could trigger a wider conflict across Europe, Denmark found it urgent to act. Okay, so everybody in Europe is freaking out about what is happening in Ukraine. And yes, indeed, it could spread beyond the borders of Ukraine into Belarus or whatever. And so we're talking about something being triggered. To trigger here just means to start something in action. Like when you pull the trigger of a gun, you shoot a bullet out of the barrel of the gun, and the bullet flies toward its target. So it could launch a wider conflict across Europe. So Denmark found it urgent to act. So they feel this threat and they think, wow, we don't want those Russians coming over here to force us to drink vodka and eat borscht and stuff like that. So yeah, we've got to do something so we can continue to enjoy our Danish pastries.
You know what's ironic? It's the Russians that have wanted peace, but it's European nations that are just inciting more and more war, conflict, war. So we'll see what happens. Of course, the citizens, none of us want to be in a war, but our leaders make a lot of money when we go to war. So speak up, let your governments know how you feel. We want our young people to stay alive. And there's no use going over to Ukraine, which is an impossible thing for any of those countries to win. Russia has a much stronger military, but we'll see what happens, guys. Our world is kind of crazy. So this is emphasizing a shift here. It's not a show of aggression, they think, but we'll see what happens. So they've got a measure they've put out to prevent war, they think, and meet NATO's expectations for higher readiness, being ready for something. That's what readiness means among all its members. What's NATO, Tom?
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so of course that's a pact between basically the U.S. and European countries, Western European countries. And of course, they say that if one country is attacked, the other countries are supposed to stand up and protect them from the aggressor. And that's been around since the end of World War II. And yes, indeed, NATO is expecting all of its members to be ready in case there is some kind of attack. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, Denmark's initiative is not without precedent. Okay, so again, the initiative, of course, is something that people are doing on their own. They decided to act and do this without waiting for others. And yes, indeed, we're saying that it doesn't have precedent. A precedent is kind of a political term. It's kind of a legal term. That just means we're talking about something that happened before, and then we base our decisions on what happened before. This happens a lot in law when, a trial or a judge needs to decide a case. They tend to look at precedent. Well, how was this decided in the past? And if it was decided that way in the past, well, we'll decide that way now because there's precedents. In other words, we have a previous example. So here, yeah, this is just basically saying that this has happened before.
Now, in recent years, countries like Norway and Sweden, part of Scandinavia, they've expanded conscription to include women, viewing it as a step toward modernizing forces and social equality. So if you modernize something, you turn it into something that's kind of old or outdated, and you want to bring it up to current standards. And that's what they're trying to follow. So they weren't the first to do this. So if you're the very first, you're a forerunner, you're a pioneer in that. But here, they don't have that to stand on. Denmark follows Norway and Sweden, who have also expanded conscription to include women. So they also, besides just modernizing their military, they feel like it's helping with social equality, making men and women equal. So that's their viewpoint, and that's the step they take to bring things into a more progressive situation or mode. I think their citizens are happy with this. If they're not, you know what citizens do if they're not happy, they protest.
Indeed. So I guess there is precedent. They did this in Norway and Sweden as well. And let's talk about the example of Israel. In Israel, compulsory service for both sexes has become widely acknowledged as indispensable for survival due to ongoing external threats. Okay, so if something's compulsory, that means you're required to do it. You don't have any choice. It's required by law. And here in Israel, both men and women need to serve in the military. And, of course, this is all about the Middle East. People have different opinions about that. But, of course, as you know, Israel is surrounded on all sides by Arab countries who don't recognize Israel, and they don't recognize Israel's right to exist. They want to destroy Israel, and, of course, Israel wants to protect itself. So they need as many soldiers as they can, so they have compulsory service for both boys and girls.
They do, and you'll often see pictures of Israeli women with these big guns, and they look very fierce. But yeah, they're all required to serve in the military, compulsory. Sometimes you'll see that word compulsory if you go to college, and they'll talk about courses that you must take and courses that are up to you. You know, it's usually your first couple of years in college where you have to take your compulsory courses, where if you don't take those, you cannot graduate. So here it is compulsory service there in Israel. So yeah, I think Israel was the first country to have compulsory service for men and women, if I'm not mistaken. It's been going on a long time too, so it's not something brand new. We're probably going to take a break here, guys. We don't have our Chinese teacher today, sorry. But we will be back to continue discussing this particular issue. Do you want your country to draft women? Taiwan's watching closely. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about Denmark's new initiative that they passed. They're now making it mandatory for Danish women, once they turn 18, to be entered into the draft lottery for the military. And if they are selected, remember, if it's a lottery, it's random selection. So you just kind of cross your fingers and hope you don't get selected, that your name's not pulled, I guess. But they are having to enter the draft lottery for the military, and they have to serve in the military for 11 months, the same amount of time that the men are serving currently.
Exactly. Okay, so again, they were talking about the example of Israel. They've got compulsory service for both sexes there because of the external threats or the threats from outside of Israel. Who's their biggest threat? I guess Iran is a big threat there. They've got other threats from other countries
Gaza.
There as well. Gaza, indeed. Hamas, of course, are sending terrorists over there all the time. From the river to the sea, they want to destroy Israel. And yes, indeed, those are external threats. And such examples demonstrate how global defense strategies are shaped by both practical necessity and changing social expectations. Okay, so there are a lot of factors influencing this decision. We're talking about defense strategies all over the world, and we're kind of looking at each other and seeing how one country does it. Is it going to work there? Will it work with us or whatever? And of course, you got practical necessity. Do we have threats from other countries? Are they going to attack us, or are we pretty peaceful? And we don't need a military, like Costa Rica, for example, doesn't really have any external threats, so they don't really need a military there. But in other countries, they do need it. And, of course, they need to talk about these changing social expectations. Indeed, we're talking about inequality and equality. Hey, if the men have to serve, maybe the women have to serve too.
Yeah, so it's become a question that a lot of people are talking about. I bet it's discussed among the young people here in Taiwan. I know it's a big question even now in America. And I know in Europe, the leaders at least, are trying to get their kids excited about battle and war because they want them to enlist. We'll see what happens. Our world is kind of unstable these days, I would say. So we're seeing examples of how global defense strategies, these are your plans, how you're going to enact something, are shaped by both practical necessity. Maybe you have someone attacking you. I'll tell you, if you get attacked, it perks up the young people. They want to help save their nation. That's what happened in 9/11, right? 9/11 happened and everyone signed up for the military to try to go and fight the bad guys. Who knows who the bad guys are sometimes? And it also they're changing social expectations. There's a lot of push these days to say that men and women are exactly the same. There's no difference between the sexes. So if you buy into that, it's a progressive thought. Maybe this is something you support.
Maybe, but I think if you get men and women fighting each other on the battlefield, I think the men will probably win big time. It might depend on their weapons, who knows? But again, this is something for all of you to discuss on your own. Now let's talk about Taiwan. For Taiwan, which contends with persistent security threats and a rapidly aging population, female conscription has long been a topic of public debate. So my daughter tells me that this is often discussed on D-Card, which is an online forum here in Taiwan, and it's discussed quite a bit. I'm not going to say which side of the issue I am on in this particular case. I don't think I am on either side because I don't know much about it. But here, Taiwan does have the external threat. I'm not talking about who the threat is from, but I think we all know where the threat comes from. And so, of course, they've got that external threat. And also, we've got the problem of a rapidly aging population. Okay, so more and more people are getting old. And we're just not having babies anymore. I think only South Korea has a lower birth rate than Taiwan.
Wow.
I think so. So, of course, we don't have enough boys growing up to become soldiers. So, hey, what are we going to do if somebody attacks us? We can't send a bunch of babies out onto the battlefield or dogs because, hey, they can't use weapons.
Well, nowadays, our military is using a lot of weapons that are run by AI even. We have drones now. So I'm not sure that we're going to be fighting these kinetic wars, as we call them, when real people go out there on, in tanks and have guns and fight that way. We are fighting different types of wars these days. Lots of drones being used. We'll see what happens there. I hope that helps save some lives. But, drones can kill as many people as a real person. So we'll see. It's an interesting conversation, that's for sure. But Tom's right. We're seeing the birth rates drop around the world. And Asia in particular is having a lot of trouble keeping the population numbers high enough so that the young people can take care of the elderly as they get older and they need more help. And, that social safety net is kind of weakened by not having kids that replace the population reduction.
It's interesting what's going to happen in the future, of course. And promising as the idea may seem, it does seem that the idea of drafting women into the military, it does seem that it's promising that it may produce positive results. Still, significant challenges remain. Okay, so there are still other issues that we need to take into consideration. Here in the next sentence, it says, while expanding the draft could strengthen personnel and defense awareness, outdated infrastructure, insufficient barracks, and risks of harassment or gender-based discrimination cannot be overlooked. Okay, so again, this is a very long sentence, so let's break it down for you. It is true that expanding the draft could strengthen personnel and defense awareness. Okay, so those are some of the advantages to expanding the draft to get women in the military as well. Indeed, it could strengthen personnel. We'd have more people available to have rifles and go out into the battlefield and fight the enemy. And also it could be useful for making people aware that there's a threat, okay? If women don't have to serve in the military, they probably never think about it. Hey, that's not going to ever happen. Why would it happen to us? I've got a nice job. I've got a nice wardrobe. But hey, if they had to serve in the military, maybe they would take that threat more seriously. We've also got some other problems here. Outdated infrastructure.
Yeah.
As you said, they're using drones more and more. So maybe the tanks that we have or the planes we have are outdated because the drones are probably going to do more of the work. And we've also got insufficient barracks. Barracks are places where the soldiers live. And, of course, they're designed now for men. And so they'd probably have to build new ones that can be more suitable for women. And then, of course, we have the risks of harassment and gender-based discrimination. Of course, you're probably going to have cases of rape and things like that if men and women are close to each other.
That's a big problem. The quantities or the number of rapes have really risen and covered up sometimes, by troops who don't want to turn their friend in. It's just a problem with men and women. It's very hard to put them together in a closed, confined space like that and not have problems. You've got substantial funding that you're going to need. There's also, I skipped one here, gender-based discrimination cannot be overlooked. Some of the guys complain that it's not fair that the women don't have to meet the same standards. Listen, females don't have the upper body strength or the lower body strength that men do. And so if you drop the standards, it hurts your military as well. So you've got the women complaining that the standards are too high for them. It hurts them. Got the men complaining, well, that's not fair. We have to pull the weight. We have to pull the load. There are arguments on both sides. Moreover, it says without substantial means really significant, a large amount. Maybe it's substantial in importance or value. Here we're talking about money. And public consensus, getting the public to agree. Now, consensus doesn't mean 100% agreement. It says the general majority of people all feel the same way. Such a policy would face considerable barriers, things that are going to get in the way of progress or barriers that you're going to have to confront. And that's going to make it hard to implement this particular policy. Implementation, of course, is the noun form of the verb to implement, to put into action or to affect something.
Exactly. So again, what we're saying is that this is going on in Denmark. They're having a compulsory military service for women as well as men. So of course, Taiwan is going to be watching this situation. I haven't really heard much of the government saying that they're thinking about doing this here in Taiwan. I can't imagine them ever doing it. But you never know, they might think about it because of that external threat and because of the aging population or whatever. And only by confronting these issues can Taiwan determine whether female conscription would truly benefit the defense of its society. I did want to mention, I think maybe in the USA during World War II, they kind of had conscription for women because as the men were going off to fight in the battlefields, they had a lot of women working in the factories, building military equipment. So maybe something like that could be used or whatever, have the women work in the factories or whatever while the men are in the battlefields.
Yeah, they weren't forced to go work in the factories, but boy, we needed some help in the factories, didn't we? As our men were going to battle, somebody had to be making the things that people were needing to use. Our military was needing to use. So there are other options, I think. I think it's going to really disrupt the family, but that's a traditional value I have. I think it is going to hurt the family more and more as we shift to make male and female completely the same. I think they're very different. I was saying to a friend the other day, because we had a fire alarm in our building, and I thought, I don't want any female firefighter coming and trying to carry me down from the 7th floor. There are some jobs that I think are more suitable for men because of their strength.
Indeed. And of course, you can't deny that all the infrastructure in society is built by men. The highways, the telephone poles, all that stuff is built by construction workers who are probably 95% men. So, yeah, this is something you should take into consideration if you want to bring the women into the military. And if you do bring them into the military, where are they going to keep all their cosmetics? That's a pretty big problem that may take up a lot of space or whatever.
Oh, they don't wear makeup in the military, haven't you noticed?
They probably don't have to. Well, they probably wear, camouflage or whatever. That might be another consideration as well. But, hey, we're at the end of our discussion for today. And there's no Chinese teacher today, so we're going to bring it right to the end. So thanks for joining us. And make sure you join us again next time for another edition of English Digest. And also make sure you check out our extra content on YouTube and Facebook. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.